They say, use the right tool for the job, but for some people, that's just a suggestion. This isn't a list of accidents. This is a highlight reel of people who looked at perfectly normal problems and solved them in ways so creative that physics had no choice but to get involved. We're talking about tools used for the wrong job, shortcuts that made things worse, and decisions that turned everyday situations into final ones. These are not mistakes. These are commitments to bad ideas. And every single one of them ends the same way, with reality saying, no, that's not how this works. Pay attention, because all of these started with one simple thought. This should work. Number 1. The grinder chainsaw genius. Suburban backyards are supposed to be peaceful. Green grass, trimmed hedges, controlled environments where nothing unexpected happens. Unless you are Arthur. Arthur didn't believe in yard work. He believed in ending yard work quickly. And that distinction matters, because Arthur had a problem. Overgrown bushes. Thick, dense, stubborn. The kind of problem that most people solve with a hedge trimmer, a chainsaw, or hiring someone who knows what they're doing. Arthur chose none of those, because those solutions require effort, money, or humility. Arthur had something better, an angle grinder. Now, for those unfamiliar, an angle grinder is not a gentle tool. It is a handheld machine designed to spin a disc at around 11,000 revolutions per minute. That's not cutting speed, that's angry metal screaming speed. It's built for grinding steel, cutting bolts, throwing sparks like a fireworks show. It is not, under any circumstance, a substitute for a chainsaw. Arthur disagreed, because Arthur had found something online, an attachment, a circular blade with chainsaw teeth, designed to fit onto a grinder, which is basically like putting a rocket engine on a shopping cart and calling it transportation. Now let's pause. Chainsaws are designed with controlled torque, a clutch system, and a chain that moves with resistance. Grinders have none of that. They spin, fast, constant, unforgiving. Arthur made his first critical decision. He removed the safety guard, because safety guards are annoying, and in Arthur's world, anything that slows you down is optional. He plugged the grinder in, pulled the trigger, and instantly the tool came alive. High-pitched, violent, eager. At this point, Arthur was probably thinking, this is going to save me so much time. He approached the bush. Not trimming, not testing, he went straight for the thickest part, because if you're going to be wrong, you might as well be confidently wrong. He pressed the spinning blade into the wood, and that's when physics showed up. Because when a chainsaw meets wood, it cuts. Gradually, controlled. But when a grinder blade spinning at 11,000 revolutions per minute meets solid resistance, it doesn't cut. It grabs. Instantly. Violently. The teeth caught. The blade stopped. But the motor did not. And all that energy had to go somewhere. It went backward. The grinder kicked. Hard. Not a push, not a nudge. A violent snapping force. Like the tool itself was trying to escape. Arthur didn't have gloves, didn't have control, didn't have time. The machine ripped out of his hands, and because he had removed the guard, there was nothing left between him and the consequence of his own setup. The blade came up, fast, clean arc, no hesitation. And in that moment, the experiment ended, immediately, completely. The grinder fell into the grass, still spinning, still screaming, still doing exactly what it was built to do, just not what Arthur needed it to do. The official report described it as kickback during improper tool use, which is a very polite way of saying he turned a precision tool into a weapon against himself. Arthur wanted efficiency, speed, a shortcut, a smarter way to do a simple job, and for a split second, it looked like he had one, until the tool reminded him it wasn't designed for that. There's a lesson here. Tools are not interchangeable. Just because something spins doesn't mean it cuts safely. And if your entire plan depends on, this looks like it should work, you're not solving the problem, you're just creating a new one. Number 2, the gasoline dishwasher experiment. There are 2 kinds of cleaning. The normal kind, soap, water, patience. And then there's the kind where someone decides there has to be a faster way. Meet Brian, owns tools, doesn't believe in taking things apart unless absolutely necessary. Brian had a problem. Engine parts, covered in grease, oil baked on, layers of mechanical history that don't come off with a paper towel. Now, professionals solve this with parts washers, degreasers, ventilation, and a basic understanding of chemistry. Brian looked at all of that and saw inconvenience, because Brian had something better: a dishwasher. Now, let's pause. A dishwasher is designed for water, detergent, food residue. It is not designed for gasoline, oil vapor, or anything that can turn your kitchen into a science experiment with a short fuse. Brian ignored this, because in his mind, cleaning is cleaning, liquid is liquid, and machines? Machines just make things easier. He opened the dishwasher, loaded it with engine parts. Heavy, greasy, still smelling like a gas station. At this point, most people would stop, reconsider, maybe question why their dinner plates are about to share space with a carburetor. Brian did not, because Brian had already committed, and commitment is what carries bad ideas forward. Then came the critical step. Instead of detergent, he used gasoline, because gasoline dissolves grease, which is true. It also creates flammable vapor, which Brian did not factor into his plan. He poured it in, closed the door, selected a cycle, pressed start. At this point, Brian was probably thinking, "This is genius." And for a few seconds, nothing happened. Just the normal sounds: water moving, spray arms spinning, a machine doing exactly what it was built to do. Which is where the problem begins, because dishwashers heat water, and gasoline, when heated, doesn't just sit there, it evaporates. And those vapors? They don't disappear, they accumulate inside a sealed metal box with electrical components and zero ventilation. This is not cleaning, this is pressure building, invisible, silent, inevitable. Inside the machine, the environment changed, from washing cycle to fuel-air mixture, which, in very simple terms, is what engines run on. The only thing missing was ignition. And dishwashers have plenty of that. Heating elements, electrical relays, sparks that are normally harmless, until they're not. The moment it happened, it didn't build, it didn't warn, it just converted. From liquid to vapor to explosion. Instantly. The dishwasher door didn't open, it left. The surrounding structure didn't crack, it failed, violently. Because pressure, once released, doesn't negotiate, it expands, fast. Brian didn't have time to react, because there is no reaction time in an explosion, just cause and effect. The aftermath was immediate. Smoke, debris, silence where a machine used to be. The official report described it as ignition of flammable vapors inside household appliance, which is a very technical way of saying he turned a dishwasher into an engine and forgot engines are designed to explode safely. Brian wanted efficiency, a shortcut, a smarter way to do a dirty job. And in a way, he got one. Everything was cleaned, instantly, just not in the way he expected. There's a lesson here. Some substances don't just clean, they change environments. And when you combine heat, pressure, and flammable vapor, you're not improving a process, you're creating a new one that ends very quickly. Because chemistry doesn't care what you intended, it only cares what you built. Number 3, the vice grip steering wheel solution. There are moments in life where something breaks, and you have 2 choices: fix it properly, or convince yourself you don't need it. Meet Carl, truck owner, firm believer that most problems are over-engineered. Carl had a problem. His steering wheel came loose. Not completely off, just unreliable, wobbly, unstable. The kind of issue that most people would immediately treat as, do not drive this vehicle. Carl saw it differently, because in Carl's mind, steering isn't about the wheel, it's about turning the shaft. And anything that can grip and turn can replace the wheel. So instead of repairing it, Carl grabbed a pair of vice grips. Now let's pause. A steering wheel is not just something to hold, it's designed for leverage control, smooth input, and consistent response at speed. Vice grips are designed to clamp, hold, and occasionally destroy whatever they're attached to. They are not ergonomic, stable, or remotely suitable for steering a moving vehicle. Carl ignored this, because from his perspective, the shaft turns the tool, grips problem solved. He clamped the vice grips onto the steering column, tight, tested it, turned left, turned right. It worked, which is exactly how bad ideas begin. At this point, Carl was probably thinking, see, same thing. He got in the truck, started the engine, pulled onto the road. Now here's where reality starts to matter. Driving is not static, it's dynamic. Constant adjustments, micro-corrections, small movements that keep everything stable. A steering wheel allows that. Vice grips do not, because they slip shift and require force in ways the system was never designed for. Carl drove anyway, because it worked, and working once is all the proof he needed. Then came the moment. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a small adjustment, a slight turn, at speed. The vice grips shifted. Not completely, just enough, because grip is not control, and clamping something does not mean you understand how it behaves under load. The angle changed, the input became uneven. Carl corrected, overcorrected, because without proper leverage, precision disappears. Now the vehicle wasn't being guided, it was being negotiated with. The system he created had no margin, no smoothness, no forgiveness, just force and reaction. And at speed, that's all it takes. The vice grip slipped again, this time more. The steering input failed, not gradually, but completely. Because improvised systems don't degrade nicely, they collapse. The truck didn't wait, momentum continued, direction didn't. And from that point on, Carl wasn't driving anymore, he was along for the result. The official report described it as loss of vehicle control due to improper steering modification, which is a very structured way of saying he replaced control with a tool that only pretends to have it. Carl wanted a quick fix, a shortcut, a way to avoid dealing with the actual problem. And for a moment, he had one. The truck moved, the wheels turned, everything seemed fine, until the part that requires precision arrived. There's a lesson here. Some systems don't just need to function, they need to function correctly. And if your solution is, it turns, so it works, you're not fixing the system, you're delaying the moment it fails. Because control isn't about making something move, it's about making sure it moves exactly how you intend. And Carl replaced that with a pair of pliers. Number 4, the ratchet strap slackline experiment. There are two types of people when they see something difficult. The first group thinks, that probably takes practice. The second group thinks, I could do that right now. Meet Travis, outdoor enthusiast, recently introduced to slacklining through exactly 3 Instagram videos. Slacklining, for those unfamiliar, is the art of walking across a tensioned line. Professionals make it look effortless, smooth steps, perfect balance, calm control. What you don't see is specialized webbing, carefully tuned, tension, and hours of practice, just to stand still. Travis saw none of that. Because Travis wasn't interested in mastery, he was interested in skipping directly to the impressive part. Now, to do slacklining properly, you need dynamic webbing that stretches slightly, anchor systems designed to absorb movement, controlled tension to allow balance corrections. Travis had something else, a ratchet strap. Now let's pause. Ratchet straps are designed to lock cargo tightly in place, eliminate movement, and stay rigid under tension. Slacklines are designed to flex, bounce, and respond to your weight. These are not similar systems, they are opposites. Travis ignored this, Because, from his perspective, it's a line, it's tight, it connects 2 points. That's enough. He strapped it between 2 trees, cranked it tight, very tight, because tighter means stronger, and stronger means safer, which is not how balance works. At this point, Travis was probably thinking, this is actually better than the real thing. His friends were there, phones out, because this had already crossed into content territory. He stepped onto the strap, and immediately something felt off. No give, no movement, just a rigid line that didn't respond. Because slacklining is about balance through feedback, and Travis had removed all feedback. But instead of stopping, he adjusted, shifted his weight, tried to stabilize, and for a moment he managed to stand, which is all the confidence he needed to continue. Bad ideas don't need success, they just need one small confirmation. He took a step, the strap didn't move, so his body did, more aggressively. Because when the system doesn't absorb motion, your body has to. His balance broke, quickly, violently. And now, he wasn't walking, he was reacting, trying to correct something that couldn't be corrected. Because the system had no flexibility, no forgiveness, no margin. Then came the critical moment. His weight shifted suddenly, the strap snapped tight, not stretching, not absorbing, just transferring force, directly, into him. Because when something doesn't flex, it redirects energy. Travis slipped. The strap rebounded, hard. Like a loaded spring releasing all at once. And when it hit, it didn't feel like a line. It felt like a cable under tension doing exactly what it was designed to do. His body was thrown off balance completely. No recovery, no second chance. Just force meeting flesh at the worst possible moment. The camera caught the aftermath. Not the fall, but the silence after. That pause where everyone realizes, this wasn't just a failed attempt. The official report described it as injury resulting from improper use of load-bearing equipment, which is a very neutral way of saying he used a system designed to eliminate movement for something that depends on it. Travis wanted balance, control, a moment that looked effortless, and instead, he built the exact opposite environment, one where every mistake was amplified. There's a lesson here. Balance doesn't come from removing movement, it comes from managing it. And if your entire setup is designed to fight motion, it will fight you too, because tools don't adapt. They do exactly what they're built to do. And Travis asked the wrong tool to solve the wrong problem. Number 5. The Zip Tie Spring Compression Plan. There are things in this world that store energy. Batteries, compressed air, springs. The difference is, springs don't look dangerous, until they are. Meet Nate, car guy, does his own repairs, believes that most specialty tools are just overpriced versions of simpler things. Nate had a problem. His car's suspension needed work, specifically the coil spring. Now, if you've never dealt with one, here's what matters. A coil spring is not just metal. It is stored force, compressed, held in place, waiting. Professionals use spring compressors, heavy-duty tools designed to evenly compress the spring, control the release of energy, prevent it from turning into a projectile. Nate didn't have one, because those tools cost money, and Nate had something better: zip ties. Now let's pause. Zip ties are designed to bundle cables, organize wires, hold lightweight things together. They are not designed to restrain thousands of pounds of compressed force. But Nate saw potential, because in his mind, they tighten, they hold, they're strong. And if one isn't enough, just use more. That logic has never ended well. He wrapped multiple zip ties around the spring, tightened them, one by one, each click feeling like progress, each click making the situation worse. At this point, Nate was probably thinking, this is basically the same thing, because everything held, nothing moved, no immediate failure, which is the most dangerous phase of any bad idea, because it creates confidence, false confidence, the kind that says, see, I don't need the proper tool. He began working, loosening components, shifting parts, interacting with a system that was under massive tension, held together by plastic. Plastic. The kind designed to hold cables, not consequences. Now here's the part Nate didn't understand. Spring force doesn't care about intentions. It doesn't care about how many zip ties you used. It only cares about when it's released. And when it releases, it does it all at once. Not gradually, not politely, violently, inevitably. The moment came without warning. One zip tie snapped, just one. But that's all it takes. Because once one fails, the load shifts to the others, instantly. They stretch, strain, fail, one after another. Not slowly, but in a chain reaction. Plastic giving way under force it was never meant to handle. And then, nothing held it anymore. The spring released, not as an object, but as energy. Explosive, uncontrolled, fast. The metal didn't move, it launched. Because when stored force escapes, it doesn't ask permission. It takes the shortest path out. Nate didn't have time to react, because reaction time doesn't exist in moments like that. Just cause and consequence. The aftermath was immediate, silent in the worst way. The kind of silence that follows something that cannot be undone. The official report described it as failure of improper compression method during suspension repair, which is a very calm way of saying he tried to contain force with something designed for convenience. Nate wanted to save money, avoid buying a tool, prove that he could figure it out himself. And for a moment, it looked like he had. Everything held. Everything stayed in place. Everything seemed under control. Until the system reminded him, control isn't about holding things still. It's about understanding what they're trying to do. There's a lesson here. Some objects don't look dangerous because the danger is hidden inside them. And if your plan is, I'll just hold it together, without understanding what you're holding back, you're not fixing the problem. You're just deciding when it happens. Because energy doesn't disappear. It waits, and then it collects. Number 6, the seatbelt bottle opener. Some bad ideas don't start with ambition. They start with boredom. Meet Eric. Road trip. Passenger seat. Nothing urgent happening, until there was. Eric had a problem. A bottle of soda, sealed, cold, and inconveniently, unopened. Now, most people solve this with their hands a bottle opener, or literally anything designed for the task. Eric chose creativity, because sitting in a moving car with nothing to do is the perfect environment for bad ideas to feel like good ones. He looked around. Glove compartment, nothing. Center console, empty. No opener. Then his eyes landed on something. The seatbelt. More specifically, the metal latch. Now let's pause. A seatbelt is not just a strap. It's a safety system designed to lock under sudden force, restrain the body during impact, and distribute energy across the torso. The metal latch is engineered for one thing: locking you in place during a crash. Not opening soda, not absorbing side pressure, not improvisation. Eric ignored this, because from his perspective, it's metal, it's strong, it has an edge. That's enough. He pulled the seatbelt across, positioned the bottle cap against the latch, and smiled, because this is exactly the kind of thing that feels clever. At this point, Eric was probably thinking, watch this. The driver glanced over, not concerned, just mildly curious. Because on the surface, this doesn't look dangerous. It looks stupid. And those are not always the same thing. Eric pressed the cap against the latch, applied force. The cap bent slightly. Almost there. Validation. So he pushed harder. Because if a little force works, more force works better. That logic has ended a lot of stories. Now here's the problem. Seatbelt latches are not passive. They are part of a tension system, connected to a retractor, built to lock under movement. And when you apply force in the wrong direction, you're not just using metal, you're engaging a mechanism. At the exact moment Eric pushed harder, the car hit a small bump. Nothing dramatic, just enough. The seatbelt retractor locked, instantly, as designed, which meant the latch was no longer free to move. But Eric's hand was still applying force, and now the system had changed, from loose tool to locked restraint under tension. The bottle didn't open. The force redirected into the latch, into his hand, into a situation that escalated faster than he understood. Because once the system locked, there was no adjustment, no repositioning, no control, just pressure. Sudden, sharp, unforgiving. The reaction was immediate. Too late, because when mechanisms engage, they don't ask what you're trying to do. They do what they were designed to do. The driver pulled over, not because of the bottle, because of what followed. The official report described it as improper use of vehicle safety equipment resulting in injury, which is a very structured way of saying he turned a life-saving device into something it was never meant to be. Eric wanted a shortcut, a quick solution, a clever trick to solve a tiny problem, and he found one, for a moment. Right up until the system reminded him, it has a job, and it's very good at it. There's a lesson here. Not everything needs a creative solution. Some things already have a purpose. And when you repurpose them, without understanding how they work, you're not being clever, you're just testing a system that doesn't care what you intended. Because convenience doesn't change design, and design always wins. Number 7. The gun as a hammer logic. There are tools designed to solve problems, and then there are tools designed to end them. Confusing the two is how stories like this happen. Meet Daniel, owns a firearm, doesn't own a hammer, at least not within arm's reach. Daniel had a simple problem, a nail, halfway into a piece of wood, sticking out just enough to be annoying. Now, most people would go get a hammer, use literally anything blunt, or take the extra 20 seconds to do it correctly. Daniel chose efficiency, because walking across the room felt unnecessary, and unnecessary things get replaced by whatever is closest. What was closest was a handgun. Now let's pause. A firearm is not a tool, not in the way people think. It is a system designed for one outcome, controlled detonation. Inside every gun is a firing pin, a chamber, a trigger system, and energy waiting to be released. Even when you're not using it, it's still loaded with potential. Daniel ignored all of that, because from his perspective, it's metal, it's heavy, it fits in the hand, which is apparently enough to qualify as a hammer. He picked it up, turned it around, grip first, positioned the handle over the nail. At this point, Daniel was probably thinking, this will take 2 seconds. And he wasn't wrong, it did. He brought the gun down, once. The nail moved slightly. Success. That's all bad ideas need, one small confirmation. So he did it again, harder. Because if something works, you double down. Now here's the part Daniel didn't understand. A firearm doesn't need to be used to activate. It just needs the right interaction. Pressure, impact, misalignment. And when those line up, the system does what it was built to do. The second strike landed, but not cleanly. The force transferred through the frame, into components that were never meant to absorb blunt impact. And in that exact moment, the system engaged. Not intentionally, not deliberately, just mechanically. The result was immediate. Because firearms don't build up to anything, they convert energy instantly. There was no time to react, no time to rethink the plan. Just a transition from tool misuse to consequence. The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that feels calm, the kind that arrives when something irreversible just happened. The official report described it as accidental discharge during improper handling of a firearm, which is a very formal way of saying he treated a weapon like a household object. Daniel wanted convenience, a shortcut, a faster way to solve a small, harmless problem. And instead, he introduced a system into the situation that was never designed to be harmless. There's a lesson here. Some tools are not interchangeable, not even slightly. And when you ignore what something is designed to do, you don't change its function. You just change the moment it happens. Because a hammer hits, a gun finishes. Number 8. The coax cable rappel plan. There are two kinds of descent. The controlled kind, where you lower yourself carefully using equipment designed to manage your weight. And then there's the kind where someone looks at a problem and thinks, anything that holds tension should work. Meet Victor, apartment owner, mildly inconvenienced. Victor had a problem. He was locked out. Door closed, keys inside. Second floor. Not high enough to feel impossible, just high enough to make bad ideas feel reasonable. Now, most people would call a locksmith, wait for help, or find a safe way down. Victor chose independence, because waiting is slow, and slow is unacceptable when you're standing outside your own door. He looked around. No ladder, no rope. Then he saw it, a coaxial cable, running along the wall, connected to his apartment. Thin, flexible, attached at both ends. To Victor, that was enough. Now let's pause. A coaxial cable is designed to transmit signals, carry data, and remain structurally intact under minimal stress. It is not designed to support human weight, handle dynamic load, or act as a descent system. Climbing ropes, on the other hand, are engineered to stretch under force, absorb energy, and prevent sudden failure. Coax cable does none of that. It doesn't stretch, it doesn't absorb, it simply exists until it doesn't. Victor ignored this because, from his perspective, it's connected, it's holding, it hasn't broken, which is apparently enough to trust it with your entire body. He climbed over the railing, grabbed the cable, tested it, pulled slightly. It held, which is all the confirmation he needed. At this point, Victor was probably thinking, I'll just slide down. And that's where the plan stopped being a plan. Because descending is not the same as holding, and sliding is not the same as controlling. He lowered himself, weight transferring onto the cable, slowly at first, carefully. And for a moment, it worked. The cable held. His body descended. Everything seemed manageable. Validation. But here's the problem. Weight doesn't stay constant. Movement adds force. And the moment Victor shifted, the load changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Because materials don't fail when things are stable. They fail when things move. The cable tightened, strained. Not visibly, not loudly, just internally. Because failure doesn't always announce itself. Victor continued descending, now fully committed. No way back up, no alternative, just down. And then, it happened. The cable gave. Not partially, not gradually, completely. Because materials don't negotiate with misuse. They reach a limit, and then they stop existing as support. The system disappeared, instantly. Victor didn't have time to react, because reaction requires warning, and there was none. Just a shift from supported to unsupported in one motion. The ground didn't move, the plan did. And from that point on, gravity handled the rest. The camera from a nearby window caught the moment after. Not the fall, but the stillness that follows something that wasn't supposed to happen that way. The official report described it as fall resulting from use of non-load-bearing cable for descent, which is a very technical way of saying he trusted a wire to do the job of a rope. Victor wanted a solution, a quick exit, a way to fix a small inconvenience without asking for help. And he found one, for a few seconds, until the system reminded him it was never designed for that. There's a lesson here. Not everything that holds tension can hold weight. And if your entire plan depends on, it seems strong enough, you're not evaluating the system, you're guessing. Because strength isn't about what something looks like, it's about what it was built to do. And Victor asked a cable to become something it never was. Number 9. The tire explosion shortcut. There are problems that require patience. And then there are people who look at those problems and think, what if I just skip that part? Meet Hank, mechanic by experience, not by training. Hank had a problem. A truck tire that wouldn't seat properly on the rim. Now, if you've never dealt with this, here's what matters. When a tire is mounted, the bead, the inner edge, needs to snap into place. Professionals do this using controlled air pressure, proper lubrication, and equipment designed to apply force evenly. Because when you're dealing with compressed air, you're dealing with stored energy, invisible, but very real. Hank didn't want to do it the slow way, because slow means effort, and effort means time. So Hank reached for a shortcut, starting fluid. Now let's pause. Starting fluid is designed to ignite easily, assist engines in cold starts and combust rapidly. It is not designed to be used inside a tire, create controlled pressure, or act as a seating mechanism. But there's a trick, a very popular one. You spray starting fluid inside the tire, ignite it, and the small explosion forces the bead onto the rim. When done correctly, by people who know exactly what they're doing, it can work. When done incorrectly, it doesn't. Hank had seen the trick. That was enough. Because in Hank's mind, he understood the concept, he had the materials, and he had confidence. What else could he possibly need? He sprayed the fluid inside the tire. Not measured, not precise. Just enough to feel like it would work. Which is where the problem begins. Because explosions are not forgiving. They don't scale politely. They don't adjust for guesswork. They either happen correctly, or they happen all at once. At this point, Hank was probably thinking, I've seen this done 100 times. He stepped back, lit a match, and introduced fire to a system full of vapor. The ignition was immediate, because that's what starting fluid does. It ignites. Fast. But instead of a controlled burst, Hank had created something else. Too much vapor, too much pressure, too little control. The tire didn't seat. It detonated. Because when pressure exceeds limits, materials don't cooperate. They fail. Violently. The force expanded outward, instantly. Sidewalls rupturing. Air compressing and releasing in a fraction of a second. A contained system becoming uncontained. Hank didn't have time to react. Because explosions don't give time. They give outcomes. The sound alone, enough to reset the environment. The aftermath? Immediate. Fragments, debris, silence. The official report described it as improper use of flammable accelerant during tire seating, which is a very careful way of saying he tried to control an explosion without understanding how much he created. Hank wanted speed, efficiency, a way to skip the boring part of the job, and in a way, he did. The tire seated, for a fraction of a second, before the system exceeded itself. There's a lesson here. Some shortcuts don't remove steps. They remove control. And when you replace measurement precision and understanding with, that should be enough, you're not speeding up the process, you're changing the outcome. Because pressure doesn't negotiate, and fire doesn't scale. They both do exactly what they're supposed to do, whether you're ready for it or not. Number 10. The pickup truck ladder shortcut. There are jobs that are slow for a reason. Painting a fence is one of them. Up, down, move the ladder, repeat. It's not difficult, it's just repetitive. And repetition is where bad ideas are born. Meet Larry, owns a pickup truck, believes strongly in doing things the smart way. Larry had a problem. A long wooden fence, sun beating down, paint bucket in hand, and a ladder that needed to be moved every few feet. Now, most people accept this. It's part of the job. Larry did not. Because in Larry's mind, the problem wasn't the fence. The problem was inefficiency. So he came up with a solution, a better system, a faster method. He placed the ladder in the bed of his pickup truck. Now let's pause. A ladder is designed to sit on stable ground, remain fixed, support vertical load without movement. A truck is designed to move, shift, and respond to terrain. Combining those two systems does not create efficiency, it removes stability. Larry ignored this, because from his perspective, the ladder stands, the truck holds it, and if the truck moves slowly, everything should be fine. That word, should, has ended a lot of plans. He climbed up, paint bucket in one hand, brush in the other. Balanced. Stable. For a moment, it worked, which is all he needed, because success, even briefly, validates everything that led up to it. At this point, Larry was probably thinking, why doesn't everyone do this? He started painting. Smooth strokes. No need to climb down. No need to reposition. Efficiency. Then came the next step. Move the truck. Just a little. Because the whole point of the system is that it moves. He climbed down, got into the driver's seat, started the engine, shifted into gear, and rolled forward. Slowly, carefully, back up the ladder, brush in hand. Everything still seemed fine, which is exactly how systems fail. Not immediately, but after they convince you they won't. He painted more, reached farther, leaned slightly, because now the goal wasn't just efficiency, it was maximizing efficiency. And maximizing anything reduces margin. Then came the moment. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a small shift. The truck moved slightly. Uneven ground. Tiny adjustment. Barely noticeable. Until it mattered. Because the ladder wasn't anchored. It wasn't fixed. It was resting. And resting systems don't stay stable when the surface moves. The ladder shifted. Just enough. Because failure doesn't need a big mistake. It just needs one small change at the wrong time. Larry felt it. That instant where balance disappears. He tried to correct, but correction requires a stable base, and he didn't have one. The ladder slid. The truck continued. And the system, the entire idea, collapsed at once. Because nothing in it was designed to work together. Larry didn't fall from a height. He fell from a misunderstanding. That movement and stability can coexist without consequence. The ground arrived, exactly where it always was. The truck stopped, exactly where it was told to. The ladder lay on its side, doing nothing wrong, because it did exactly what ladders do when they're not supported correctly. The official report described it as fall resulting from unstable ladder placement on moving vehicle, which is a very composed way of saying he tried to make a stable system out of something designed to move. Larry wanted efficiency, a shortcut, a smarter way to avoid doing the same task over and over. And for a few minutes, he had it. Less climbing, more painting, faster progress. Until the system reminded him, some processes are slow because they have to be. Every single one of these started the same way. A small problem, nothing urgent, nothing life-threatening, just something annoying. And each time, someone looked at that problem and thought, there has to be a better way. And there is. It's called the correct way. But that way is slower, less exciting, and doesn't make you feel clever. So they chose something else, something faster, something easier, something that made sense, for just long enough to commit. So here's the question. Which one wasn't just wrong, but impressively wrong? The one where the problem was small, but the solution was catastrophically creative? Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever looked at a problem and thought, I'll just figure it out, just remember, tools don't adapt to your idea, systems don't care about your intention, and physics always checks your work. Subscribe, because clearly, some people never read the manual.